Hello, I'm Reece Allingham and welcome to The Month in Movies, my new series where I discuss films released in the UK in the previous month. This month we are covering February 2018. First up we have 50 Shades Freed. 50 Shades Freed is the epic culmination of the 50 Shades of Grey franchise, except it doesn't feel epic or culminating. It doesn't feel like the events led up to anything. It was an incredibly bland film. Not horrible, but bland.
Mrs. Gray, look out your window.
What you know is true.
I'm taking you away for the weekend.
I just can't believe this is my life, that I get to live with you.
Oh, I love your precious heart.
It meant nothing to me before you.
The film sees Christian and Anastasia from the first two movies get married, and there is no real chemistry in their romance. They both are relatively attractive people by general beauty standards, so they do have that, but personality wise they don't match, and I would even go as far to say that they are near opposites. This could, in theory, lead to some good character moments if it was handled by a talented writer, but it doesn't. The franchise is famous for its sex scenes, which are, in this film, incredibly pointless and add to nothing. If you made an edit of this film without all the sex scenes, you wouldn't lose anything. The film would be exactly the same, except it would actually be better. There is a scene at the start of the movie where Anastasia takes her bikini off and Christian tells her that she can't be looking sexual in public because she's famous and people might take photos and it'll appear all over the newspapers. And then about 10 minutes later they have sex in a car outside which has windows. There's not much logic put into this film. It definitely feels like fan fiction, which is an accusation that has been thrown around and I believe has been admitted by the book's author that the original film was a Twilight fanfiction. This is where it's most evident. The writing just is atrocious. The dialogue is completely unrealistic and the structure I can't begin to describe. There is no structure for this film. There is no flow of events. This film consists of plot point, sex scene, plot point, sex scene, and so on.
I couldn't sleep.
You want to talk about it?
I've already talked to a pint of ice cream about it.
I'll make you some tea.
Oh. 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 I'm so sorry.
I would not recommend 50 Shades Freed to anyone. However, I would also not recommend the first two films, so if you are able to suffer through them, you might be able to suffer through this as well. The second film I watched in UK cinemas last month was Black Panther. Black Panther is the latest Marvel movie set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The film focuses on Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, Black Panther, who we saw previously in Captain America Civil War. The film does a good job at expanding on the MCU, introducing this new vibrant world of Wakanda. It was mentioned in previous films like Age of Ultron and Captain America Civil War, however this is the first time we see it and it looks incredible. There's a beautiful shot of the ship flying in to Wakanda and it's almost believable. The visuals most of the time in the film work. I would have preferred more practical effects, but the visual effects, they worked just about. The characters were quite interesting. You have obviously Black Panther as the lead, and he is similar to the way he was presented in Civil War, however this time with more character development. You have other characters. This is somewhat of an ensemble piece. There are a lot of powerful women in this film, which I think is great. Everybody's talking about what this does for black culture, which it does do that. It does that fantastically, but it also represents women very well. There are many strong women in this film, and I think that is brilliant. The two villains in this film are equally great. You have Michael B. Jordan as the main villain, Killmonger. He is fantastic. He has the best character of any villain in the MCU to date. His character is 100% understandable. You understand his motivations, and you can almost sympathise with him to a point.
I waited my entire life for this. The world's gonna start over. I'ma burn it all.
What happens now determines what happens to the rest of the world.
Andy Serkis also plays the second villain, Claw, and he, whilst not as developed as he is the secondary villain, Andy Serkis' portrayal is incredible, as is Michael B. Jordan's. The villains are incredibly threatening. They have brilliant screen presence. Unfortunately, Daniel Kaluuya's character was somewhat weak. I think Daniel Kaluuya is a brilliant actor. I love him in Psychoville, and I especially loved him in Get Out. Unfortunately, he isn't given a chance to shine in this film. He plays the character well, but he doesn't get enough scenes. You don't get enough time to engage with his character.
Let's have some fun.
Show off.
The soundtrack is very fun and fits the tone of the film perfectly. Unfortunately, the soundtrack album only features 3 of the songs on the film, but I can't criticise the film itself for that. My favourite scenes in the film were the ones in South Korea. You have a spy movie-esque scene followed by a car chase action scene. The first spy scene was original within the MCU. You don't get many other scenes like that in Marvel movies. Which the second one, the car chase scene, was a little generic, but the setting was brilliant. I would recommend Black Panther to fans of superhero films.
If I told you about her, the princess without voice, what would I say?
On Valentine's Day, most couples were watching 50 Shades Freed, which I previously mentioned was atrocious. But little did they know, a fantastic and beautiful film, The Shape of Water, was released on that day. I absolutely loved The Shape of Water. The Shape of Water is directed by Guillermo del Toro, who does the job masterfully. It's hard to describe this film and to review it fairly, because there isn't a lot to criticise in it. I feel like if I listed every single individual point, production design, costumes, direction, acting, I would just be repeating the same points over and over again by saying that was good, because this is a phenomenal film. The message behind the film is brilliant. I won't be giving it away because spoilers, but it's beautiful and incredibly overlooked within online communities. Sally Hawkins' performance as the lead character is fantastic. She plays a mute character, which you would expect wouldn't be as engaging as a character with dialogue. However, she still does have some dialogue through subtitled American Sign Language. However, it's her performance. Her performance is incredible. Doug Jones as well, who plays the fish monster. Doug Jones is a fantastic creature actor. He brings life and humanity to these unhuman roles.
You may think that thing looks human. Stands on two legs, right? But we're created in the Lord's image. You don't think that's what the Lord looks like, do you?
The connection and romance between these two characters is entirely believable. It's an odd premise, a mostly unique premise, other than the somewhat similar Underwater Love, the Japanese Pink musical. And that may put some people off, but please watch this film. It is fantastic. It's beautiful in a narrative sense and cinematic. The cinematography in this film is beautiful. The ending segment is one of the best shot scenes in recent memory of any film. I would strongly recommend watching The Shape of Water.
I was the best figure skater in the world at one point in time.
Call that a clean skate, for Christ's sake?
Do not swear in front of the kids.
I didn't swear, you cunt.
Who's that?
You two fuck yet?
The next film I watched in cinemas was I, Tonya. I, Tonya is a biographical film based on the life of Tonya Harding, a figure skater. Margot Robbie portrays Tonya brilliantly in this film. Her acting is incredible, as it is in many of her other films. She brings a fantastic screen presence to the character. You are entirely engaged with her in this film, which is surprising because so many of the other characters are also eye-catching and fun. The other performances in the film are also good, but Margot Robbie's is the standout performance. Speaking of performances, there are also figure skating segments in this film, as it is about a figure skater. The figure skating scenes are brilliant. They are the highlight of this film. The figure skating scenes not only look brilliant in a figure skating sense, Tonya is skating and it looks real. Obviously it's done with some body doubles and CG, but the entire time it looks convincing. She is skating brilliantly, but also it is filmed fantastically. The camera motion is incredibly immersive. It feels like you are figure skating with Tonya. The way the camera moves back and forth along the ice. The comedy in this film is incredibly well timed, as is the writing, which is brilliant. As it is a biography film, it takes some notes from other famous biography films. A lot of people compare it to Goodfellas, as it is narrated in segments. However, I believe it is closer to The Wolf of Wall Street and The Big Short, because there are scenes where the character is constantly addressing the camera and sometimes making jokes about it, and also commenting on their perspective of the scene. You have a scene where Tonya has a gun in her hand, a big shotgun. She says, "I never did this," and then proceeds to shoot it. This story is the perfect way to tell that sort of storytelling. If you're not too familiar with the story, each person involved has a drastically different account of the events that unfolded, and that leaves people unsure as to what actually happened. So, how do they do this? The screenwriters, they have different characters explaining their version of the events, their interpretation of what happened. There are interview segments where they introduce it, and it's almost documentary style. You get them talking about the events, then you see the events.
The haters always say, Tonya, tell the truth. Tonya? There's no such thing as truth. Everyone has their own truth. I never did this.
I, Tonya is a great film, and I would strongly recommend it.
What can you tell us about Tonya Harding?
I don't know a Tony Harding.
Aren't you her bodyguard?
The final film I watched in cinemas in February was Lady Bird, which was fantastic. Lady Bird is a coming-of-age film starring Saoirse Ronan as the titular character, Lady Bird. Her performance is brilliant. She has been nominated for Best Actress, as have Sally Hawkins in The Shape of Water and Margot Robbie in I, Tonya. And this is a tough year. The Oscars will be out. The award ceremony will be taking place, I believe, the day I upload this video. And I'm not certain who's going to win. This is a great year for performances. And it's hard to say who wins, who's going to win. I believe it's going to be Frances McDormand. And I thought her performance in Three Billboards was perhaps one of the greatest performances I've ever seen. But let's get back onto Lady Bird. Lady Bird is a great female story. You have female leads as well as a female director. I really wish we had more female-led, female-directed and female-focused films released. So please, if you want that as well, please go and see this film in cinemas. Support it financially so that studios can see that this is what we want.
I want to go where culture is, like
How
New
in the
York,
world did I raise such a
or at least
snob?
Connecticut or New Hampshire, where writers live in the
Get
woods.
into those schools anyway.
Mom,
You should just go to City College. You know, with your work ethic, just go to City College and then to jail and then back to City College.
The story is sweet and charming. Sometimes it is quite honest. Sometimes it's cute. You'll feel a lot of emotions whilst watching Lady Bird. However, the film structurally works. It doesn't feel at all messy. Everything feels natural and flows together well. But you still manage to feel happy, sad, you can laugh. Every emotion you can feel in this film. I would recommend Lady Bird.
Fingers crossed. What the hell is happening? Please don't bother trying to find her. She's not there.
And now on to online streaming and TV films. First up, we have the terrible Cloverfield Paradox. Cloverfield Paradox is the latest film in the Cloverfield saga, which is a very mixed bag. The first film was okay, the second film was good, and now the third film is bad. Some could say that's the perfect mixture. You have all three types of quality in the series. But that doesn't excuse the film for being terrible.
The Earth, it's gone.
It's big, blue, full of angry people. Keep looking, you'll find it.
My God.
Each film in the trilogy has been drastically different stylistically. It is an anthology trilogy with interconnecting plots, the connection being the Cloverfield monster, the Cloverfield apocalypse. I'm not sure if there's a canon name for the events, but they're all linked because there's big monsters not fighting each other, but attacking the city and monster stuff and the apocalypse. But each film has different takes. The first one is a fan footage film. The second one is a character study set in a house of people trying to survive the apocalypse. And now the third one is a sci-fi prequel origin story. In concept, that might sound interesting to some. I do like some sci-fi from time to time. I enjoy Star Wars. I enjoy some Star Trek. But that doesn't change the fact that it is a bad film. There is no reasoning behind any of the events that happen in this film. There are events which are mind-boggling and head-scratching. Somebody loses an arm in a wall and then they find the arm and it's moving on its own, and then it starts writing, and there is an explanation for this, but it doesn't make sense. There are countless other sequences that baffled me, and I can't understand why they happened. This was obviously a film that the producers knew was terrible, as they otherwise wouldn't have slapped it on Netflix the day it was announced. A lot of people were talking about this fantastic, amazing marketing strategy by releasing a film the day it's announced. But that's not impressive. That's just them realising they've got a big pile of poop on their hands and trying to get it out of the way. The film is tonally messy. Not a complete mess, but needed some work. The acting is average. There are some weaker performances, some stronger. Chris McDowd, I believe the actor's name is, who played Roy in the IT Crowd, he plays a somewhat interesting character. But it's hard to get emotionally attached to a side character in a terrible film. So, even though his role was okay, it still didn't make up for the rest of the film being absolute trite. Cloverfield Paradox is a very bad film, and it should not be watched under any circumstance.
We met 3 years ago. You are a league of their own, right?
Are you Garth?
Excellent. What is your favorite drink?
Grapefruit juice with vodka and 3 maraschino cherries. Hey, do you want to get out of here?
Yeah. It was the perfect first date.
These things are so much fun.
But I waited too long. And then I got hugged.
Oh, this is so nice to have a good guy friend. I can't even tell you.
When We First Met is a time travel romantic comedy movie. Does anybody remember the film About Time? It starred Donald Gleeson and was directed by Richard Curtis. The opening of that film was that a boy discovered he could time travel, so he uses that ability to relive the same events over and over to try and attract a girl he liked. That was a interesting sequence in a good film in About Time. But it was one sequence in an entire film. When We First Met takes that premise and stretches it out to feature length, and it doesn't work. The film does have moments where I was almost engaged in the characters. Some of the characters are bearable, whereas a lot of them are, for lack of a better word, annoying. The film almost ends on a positive note. It almost has a good moral. Each time the main character goes back in time, he takes a different approach and learns a new way to present himself, to act to the outside world. And they almost end the film with a good life message. But then he goes back one final time and learns something new. So they almost had an okay ending. But then they didn't. When We First Met is not a particularly good film. It could have been a lot worse. But it definitely could have been a lot better. I wouldn't recommend it, but if the premise sounds interesting to you, then I wouldn't recommend avoiding it.
Could you tell me what year it is?
It's 2014.
Holy shit. I just traveled back in time.
Irreplaceable You is a Netflix exclusive romance, tear-bait, emotional cancer film, which feels like it's aping off the success of The Fault in Our Stars. It is somewhat unfair to say that, as obviously Fault in Our Stars can't be the only film ever to tackle the issue of cancer. However, it does feel inspired by that film. The characters are not as interesting as the characters in Fault in Our Stars, which means this film is not as engaging. It's also not as well written, or as well shot, or as well lit, or as well edited. Basically, anything that made The Fault in Our Stars an interesting film is absent in this.
I have some difficult news. The blood test shows that you are not pregnant.
Oh, there's this moment when everything changes.
You have a mass.
It is cancer.
This is the moment.
At least we won't have to pay for college.
Unless it's a really smart tumor.
The lead actors do an okay job of sounding like humans, but they don't have particularly great screen presence or well-developed characters to work with, and that is the writer's fault. You can't blame the actors for that if they're given a standard generic character. They can't do much about that, but it means it's not interesting to watch. The writing, whilst not completely atrocious, is subpar, substandard. They try to force this catchy saying that everybody's going to be saying after the film, where somebody makes an inappropriate joke and they say, "Too soon? Too soon." And by the end of the film, you are sick of the phrase "too soon." If I went my entire life never hearing the phrase "too soon" again, I don't think I would be disappointed.
Grab a seat right there.
I feel underdressed.
Oh, that guy? He thinks it helps.
Does it?
Oh, he's not dead yet, so it's got to be doing something, right?
I'm just trying to find something positive here.
Your wig is pretty.
It's my hair now.
The film is not particularly emotional. It does, again, you aren't invested in the characters, so therefore you aren't invested in their emotions. Another thing is that you know exactly how the film is going to end, because it opens with... It doesn't even open with the ending. It opens with a scene after, chronologically after the ending. And I am all for non-linear storytelling. But if your film is about somebody with a life-threatening illness and relationship problems, you shouldn't open the film with a scene that tells you that they're going to die and that their relationship is going to be fine by the end of the film. You may be angry at me for spoiling the film for you, but if you watch the film, it's the opening. The film spoils that for you. The film might be slightly bearable if you skip that scene. But for somebody to tell you to skip that scene, they're going to have to tell you what that scene is. So they should have just cut that scene from the film or put it at the end. It almost is an acceptable film. There aren't many bad parts, but there is nothing good about it. So I would recommend giving this film a miss. The next film we're going to be discussing is Dead Shack, which is a Shudder exclusive horror comedy. It was shown at the main Fright Fest event last year and was incredibly popular. I didn't get to see it, I didn't go to Fright Fest that day, so I've been looking forward to this film and I wasn't particularly disappointed. I didn't love it, but I had some fun with it. The film is a horror comedy based around some zombies, however it is somewhat grounded. We've seen a lot of zombie apocalypse films, comedy films lately, and it's good to see a grounded film. I can't remember exactly how many zombies there were, but there weren't that many. It was all believable and small scale.
What's up, Jay? Not excited?
Not really the camping type, Mr. Slade.
You need to toughen up a little. Start with a power 5, you know? Let's see it. Power 5, like this. Come on. Power 5, like that. We'll work on it.
This place looks like a murder cabin.
Yeah, seriously, Dad?
It's the cheapest place that I could find on Craigslist, all right? You think that I can afford a place that is not in the middle of nowhere or potentially dangerous?
The special effects, I was quite surprised at the fact that they actually worked. I don't recall seeing anything where I was like, okay, that was obviously a visual effect, that was obviously CG, or that looked fake. I don't remember ever thinking that any of it looked fake. It's been a few weeks since I saw the film, so it's possible I've just forgotten, but I think the effects worked quite well. The characters, whilst not astonishing, there is some decent character work in there. The main character has, whilst not a deep arc, he does have somewhat of an arc with secrets, and he has a crush on the one of the female characters, while somewhat generic, it works, it's believable.
I'm gonna explore. Are you two coming?
Sure, we'll go.
Yo, check it out. This would be good for LARP camp next week.
Hey, Dungeons and Dildos, let's keep moving.
Guys, this is private property.
Sweet.
Scared of guard dogs or something?
Guy, can we please go? Shh.
The best friend character is obviously the comic relief in a comedy film, which you might be sighing at the concept of, but some of his jokes are kind of funny, so I could bear him. I wouldn't give the film a massive thumbs up and say you have to see it, but I'd say if you're a fan of horror comedies or zombie movies, I would recommend giving the film a shot.
Dad, we gotta get the hell out of here.
What you're saying is that our neighbor is a cannibal.
Yeah.
We gotta go then check this out.
The live-action Fullmetal Alchemist movie released in the West as a Netflix exclusive. This film is based on the Fullmetal Alchemist manga and anime series. I am not entirely familiar with the series, I know the concept and I'm aware of it, but I've never watched or read it myself. So I don't think I'm entirely entitled to review this, as I don't know how accurately it sticks to the source material, but I can tell you whether it was a good film. And the answer to that, is it a good film? Sort of. It was bearable. It was okay. The visual effects didn't particularly work, but considering the budget and the fact that it's not a Hollywood movie, it's somewhat forgivable. The visual effects, whilst you can immediately tell that they are fake, it's not so fake that it's laughable. It never took me out of the film. As it was a fantasy film, you do need that extra level suspension of disbelief, which I had, which prevented me from being taken out when I saw the visual effects. If that sounds to you like you won't like it, then I would say maybe don't watch it. The performances were average in the film, and the character development was... There was some, but there was not enough. I don't know how many episodes the anime series was, but I'm guessing that there was stuff that this film skipped out on.
物体を作り変える術、それが錬金術。錬金術師の兄弟エドとアルは死んだ母親を生き返らせようとして失敗。エドは手足を、アルは体すべてを失った。
俺が必ずお前の体を取り戻してみせる。
There was magic in the film. Magic I always have an issue with. I don't feel that enough magical films give context to everything that the characters can do with magic. They often just do whatever they want, and the writer will just let them do whatever, and they'll say, I will do it with magic. But I want to know exactly what they can do with magic. This film does not tell you that, which is especially annoying since there is a line of dialogue in this film where a character, I can't remember exactly what it said, but they said something along the lines of, it's not magic, there's a science, there's a meaning behind all of it. But then they fail to explain it fully. The film is acceptable. I wouldn't recommend it or discourage anybody from seeing it. If it sounds interesting to you, maybe watch it.
Do you have any advice for a young girl moving to Hollywood?
I'll get lively with us. Harvey Weinstein invites you to a private party in the Four Seasons stuff.
Working with Weinstein was a Channel 4 documentary about the atrocious behaviour that Harvey Weinstein committed for many years over his career. It is an emotional film, emotional documentary. It's a true story. You see the real victims telling you their experiences in interview segments, as well as there is some backstory as to how Harvey Weinstein got into power. The great thing that this documentary does is it tells you more than just the big stars. When you look at the news coverage of the Harvey Weinstein accusations, most articles were about the stars. It's saying, look at what Uma Thurman says about Harvey Weinstein. Look at what Rose McGowan says about Harvey Weinstein. And yes, that is incredibly important to know what they're saying about him. But what's also as important are people who aren't big stars who also suffered the same events. This film speaks to those people. you see assistants and crew members and just basically not just actresses. This speaks to everybody involved. I would have liked it to be longer. I feel like there could have been more context, but it was good, and I'd recommend watching it. I'd recommend it to anybody that's interested in film. Forgotten is a Korean thriller film which was picked up by Netflix in the West. The film, I believe, is best seen without knowing the plot. The film has lots of interesting twists and shocking moments. I would very much like to rewatch the film knowing the twists. There are a lot of reveals which I couldn't predict. I was genuinely shocked by some of the stuff that happened in the film. The cinematography is interesting. It's not phenomenal, but it works. The narrative is quite interesting. I can't get into discussion of the plot because I would like you to go in blind. But I'm going to say it was good. The acting was good. Again, not mind-blowing, but it worked. It worked within the context of the film. I would recommend this to anybody that doesn't mind reading subtitles or knows the Korean language.
I want to know what the deal is with this crazy bartender.
Sure you want our help with this?
This kind of thing hurts my reputation.
Daddy's gotta go. Oh, no soda.
The final film I watched on Netflix in February was Duncan Jones' Mute. I am saddened by watching Duncan Jones's career, Duncan Jones's films. I feel that Duncan Jones puts effort into his movies. However, unfortunately, recently, his films have been subpar. Warcraft, whilst not horrible, it could have been a lot better. Mute continues that trend, but this time is even worse. Mute, I can't begin to put into words how baffled I was by this film. For the first half an hour, I kept forgetting that I was watching a movie. I only watched the first episode of Altered Carbon, but it looks the same as this movie. They're both Blade Runner inspired sci-fi futuristic settings, and neither of them are dystopian. The part of Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049, which I love, is that not only is it a futuristic city, a futuristic world. Look at this stuff we could do with technology in the future, maybe. But it's also dystopian, it's broken, it's moody, it's dark. Mute would have strongly benefited from having dystopian production design, because the narrative is somewhat dark. The concept could work. A mute protagonist trying to find his girlfriend in a sci-fi world, and the sci-fi world is full of nasty people. But ultimately, when you actually watch a film, it just doesn't work. The cinematography is TV quality. I referenced Altered Carbon earlier. It looks exactly the same. And for a movie, I want my movie to look like a movie, not a TV series. the characters are not particularly good. They don't have any real development. The only character that gets some development is the secondary villain, and that comes in the form of a plot twist, which is not a spoiler because it's incredibly obvious. The secondary villain looks like a cross between Mickey Pizzazz from... what was that movie called? The one with Jack Black in. The one with Jack Black. Looks like a cross between Mickey Pizzazz and Shane Dawson's friend. I'm not trying to mock the either of those two people, but if you put them together, he looks a bit. It looks a bit like a paedophile. And then I don't know how to say this. Then there's a scene in a bowling alley where he looks at some schoolgirls and says that he likes underage girls because of their... I don't want to say it, I'll play a clip.
Oh, look at that. Schoolgirls, babe. Itty-bitty titties and smooth little pussies. Well, then they grow up.
Take your fucking shot.
I'll tell you something. It's not gonna be long before you're fighting all them young studs off that cutie pie little daughter of yours.
That scene was painful to watch. It makes me uncomfortable to think about that scene. And then, I can't remember how much later in the film, but a couple of scenes later, you see him staring at an underage girl's bottom. And then a couple of scenes later, you get the plot reveal, shocking reveal that he's a paedophile. There was no doubt in my mind that he was a paedophile from the events that I just mentioned. But it's a massive plot reveal, and it feels exploitative of people, of innocent people who went through, who suffered traumatic events from paedophiles. And then immediately after, they follow it with a happy, upbeat scene with them going out shopping in a car. And it reminded me of some of the scenes in T2 Trainspotting where Renton and Simon are sort of catching up and having fun together. The scene would have been good if I liked the characters, but the character is not only a paedophile, but it's the scene immediately after the reveal that he's a paedophile. It's baffling.
Something's going on. You need to maintain a sense of humor, babe. You gonna give me some trouble, big boy?
I might one day make a video dedicated just to Mute. I might watch it again and go into the specifics of this film, because I need to watch it again. It was terrible, but I need to watch it again to comprehend what I watch. I don't believe that I actually watch a movie. So no, I would not recommend Mute.
There is an order to things.
That's what we do here. We keep order. The world is built on a wall that separates kind. Tell either side there's no wall, you bought a war.
Now onto the Blu-ray and DVD releases. First up, at the start of the month, we got Blade Runner 2049, which is a phenomenal film that you must see. This is an absolute must-watch. It is a masterpiece. It is one of the best films ever made. There are multiple editions you can get of this. I personally got the limited edition. I'm not sure if it's still in stock. I probably should have checked that before watching the video. There's the DVD, Blu-ray, limited edition Blu-ray, 4K, 3D, and the set which comes with a 4K film as well as 2 whiskey glasses. I personally got the limited edition, which comes with the main Blu-ray, which you get from the normal Blu-ray edition, as well as a bonus disc with some somewhat interesting bonus features. It also comes with 5 art cards. Here you have Officer K visiting Sapper Morden. Here you have Officer K and Joy sharing a romantic kiss in the rain, soon to be interrupted. Here you have Officer K going to visit Deckard. Here you have Deckard, and here you have K with the Joy hologram advert. I'm very happy with these art cards. I don't know what to say, I just like them. It also comes with a digital download for the film. Blade Runner 2049 is beautiful. I am not good enough at words to describe how great this film is. It is the best cinematography I have ever seen in any film. Roger Deakins better get that Academy Award for cinematography. This is the best, not only the best cinematography of 2017, but the best cinematography ever shot. The writing is incredible. On rewatches, it improves. The first time I watched it, it was written well, but you pick up on rewatches some of the more subtle details, some of the foreshadowing, and it's incredible. The direction is brilliant. Denis does this fantastically, which makes me disappointed that there is no director's commentary on this release. I would have loved a director's commentary, but luckily there are some other bonus features which I enjoyed. With the standard Blu-ray, you get 3 shorts which were previously released on the internet. You get 2022 Blackout, which is an anime short, as well as 2036 Nexus Dawn and 2048 Nowhere to Run, which are 2 live action shorts. These are not entirely necessary for the plot, but they are decent shorts, so I would recommend watching them. There's also a series called Blade Runner 101, which I didn't understand the purpose of. They tell you about different Blade Runner technology. They tell you a bit about the weapons, the vehicles, and replicants, I believe. Now, I don't understand the purpose behind this. This would be good. It's a good explanation. It tells you what these things are. But if you've watched the film, then you know what they are. If you haven't watched the film, then it spoils the film for you by telling you what they are. I don't understand the purpose behind this. However, there was on the Blu-ray a great behind the scenes bonus feature called Designing the World of Blade Runner. there is also, on the limited edition, on the bonus disc, there are 4 different bonus features which are not seen on the standard Blu-ray. These bonus features are called To Be Human, Fights of the Future, the action of Blade Runner 2049, Two Becoming One, and Dressing the Skin, the fashion of Blade Runner 2049. The best bonus feature is the one that's on the standard Blu-ray, but the others are worth watching as well, so I would recommend buying the limited edition. However, if you can't afford it for whatever, or can't get hold of the limited edition for whatever reason, the best bonus feature is on the standard Blu-ray. I can't recommend Blade Runner 2049 enough. I absolutely loved it. I think all these 5-star reviews are incredibly well deserved.
You police plan on taking me in?
I would much prefer that to the alternative.
Eureka released House, or Hausu, by Nobuhiko Obayashi as part of their Masters of Cinema series. This, as far as presentation goes, I believe is a beautiful Blu-ray. It's a very nice design there. The back matches the colour, as you can see, and it even comes with a booklet featuring a archive essay on the film. Opens telling you credits, and then follows the essay with pictures of the film scattered throughout. It also comes with a video essay, as well as 90 minutes of interviews with the cast and crew. A lot of these cover the same things, but it's good that you get choice of what you want. If you want to learn about the film with a written essay, you can get that with the booklet. If you want to watch a video essay, you can do that with the video essay, or if you want to hear it from the people behind the film, you can watch the interviews.
House.
私あなたを救えなかった。
The film itself is a bubblegum horror film. It was it's not a particularly amazing film standalone. I believe it's a film where the story behind it is a lot more interesting than the film itself. The film was released in 1977, it says here. I thought it was 1978, but turns out I'm wrong. And this was a time in Japan where Japanese movies were not popular. Most audiences were watching American Hollywood movies. Jaws was incredibly popular, and the Japanese producers didn't know what to do. So they hired Nobuhiko Obayashi, a commercial director, to shoot something like Jaws. So instead of a man-eating shark, Obayashi turned to his daughter, who suggested a man-eating house. For this period in Japanese cinema, this was the perfect film to release at that time. It drew in audiences back to Japanese cinema, and it did that very well. Unfortunately, just watching the film on its own today, whilst it is somewhat entertaining, it doesn't hold up as well. The visual effects aren't particularly good, but as it's a low budget Japanese film from the 70s, what else can you expect? The story sees 7 girls go to a house which ends up killing them in unique ways. The girls each have their own unique traits. Obviously, in a film that's under an hour and a half, you can't develop 7 characters. So each of them are one trait. You've got Fantasy, who often has wild fantasies. She dreams these amazing things. I believe one of the characters is called Kung Fu, and she could do Kung Fu. There's Mac, who is named after the English word stomach because she likes eating. It's very bubblegum, which could put some people off. But I think it is a very, very interesting case study. If you're interested in the history of Japanese cinema, I would recommend it. If you like bubblegum films, I would recommend it. But those are 2 very niche audiences. Luckily, I am interested in the history of Japanese cinema and find bubblegum films acceptable. So I enjoyed this film. If you are either of those types of audiences, I would recommend it. Loving Vincent is a hand-painted animated film. Each frame of this film was painted by hand to replicate Vincent van Gogh's style. As the title implies, it is about the life of Vincent van Gogh. However, it's more about it's set after his death, and it sees a character who I think he was just a man in yellow suit, something like that, in the original paintings. There are references throughout to Vincent's paintings. As somebody who's not particularly familiar with the work of Vincent van Gogh, it wasn't particularly... It didn't get me overly excited because I didn't recognise all the references. But I believe if you are an art fan, that would be quite enjoyable.
Vincent left this letter. Theo van Gogh. That's Vincent's brother, isn't it?
I don't see the point in delivering a dead man's letter.
Son, if you had died and there was a letter out there that you had sent to me, I'd want it.
The animation is brilliant. I don't think there are any other films that have ever attempted this before. As I said, the whole film is hand-painted. This was achieved by a technique similar to rotoscoping. They filmed live-action segments with some visual effects and green screening, and then they used it as reference and then hand-painted each frame. This is fantastic. The animation is incredible. But the narrative, that's where the film fails. The pacing is somewhat off. It feels like a collection of interviews. The main character will go to one person, find out something about Vincent, go to another person, find out something about Vincent, go to another person, find something about Vincent, go to another person, and then finds out something about one of the other people who he spoke to earlier in the film, goes back to speak to them, learns about Vincent some more. The pacing definitely needed some work, and personally I wasn't too engaged in the narrative. However, the animation alone makes this film worth the watch if you are interested in animation. I would recommend this film to fans of Vincent van Gogh and art in general. I would have preferred the narrative to have been better, but the animation is brilliant, so you can still enjoy the film.
I'm Princess Twilight Sparkle, and this is my home, Equestria. A land filled with magic, music, whoa! And most importantly, friendship. Life is perfect. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Next up is a film that you are going to laugh at me for buying. My Little Pony, the movie. The film itself was okay. It's obviously a film for young children, and I believe for that it gets the job done. There are some bright colours, the story sort of works, there are some fun characters, and some nice songs. It is sort of a musical. You get some characters bursting into song. This happened occasionally in the series, of what I saw of the series, and it happens again in the movie. However, it's more common because it's high budget. The animation in this is more detailed than the TV series. There's a lot more shading and there's more dimension to the image. It's more 3D, whereas the TV series was somewhat flat. They were walking mostly from left to right. Whereas in this film, there'll be a character behind another character and another character behind them, and they'll move forward and backwards. And it's not exactly 3D, but it's more than 2.5D. It's hard to define. The animation currently, it works. It's more detailed than the TV series, but because of that, I believe that in the future, it's going to look more dated, because the TV series is simplistic. The characters are somewhat entertaining for a children's film. They aren't particularly well developed, but given the number of characters in the film, that is understandable.
Wow! We need help to save Equestria. What is happening?
Get her now!
The film focuses on the 6 main ponies from the film, as well as Spike the dragon. Spike the dragon didn't feel necessary to the film. There were a couple problems he solved, but I'm sure they could have found another way to write their way around it. It felt like the only reason he was in this movie was because he was part of the series.
'Cause I'm the friend you need.
He's a friend. Quite a friend. He's a friend indeed.
There are a few special features on this. There's an Equestria Girls short, which isn't entertaining and only exists to inform the audience that there is an Equestria Girls brand where the ponies are humans. There's a deleted scene which I can't recall. There's an I'm the Friend You Need music video, which shows the clip of I'm a Friend You Need in the movie, whilst cutting to footage of the actor in the studio singing the song. That was somewhat entertaining, as the actor seemed to be having fun. There is a Baking with Pinkie Pie special feature where Pinkie Pie tells you about making cupcakes. That fits the character because she likes cupcakes. And apart from that, it was somewhat painful to watch as an adult male, an 18-year-old male. It was very childish. The more worrying thing is that it doesn't tell you which measurement the degrees are in. It's obviously in Fahrenheit, but as the film is targeted towards children, they probably won't know the difference between Fahrenheit or Celsius, or be aware that there is more than one. Especially because we don't use Fahrenheit in this country. We use Celsius primarily. So it could be somewhat dangerous. I think they should have fixed that. There are 2 short documentaries about the making of the film. There's Making Magic with the Main 6 and the New Friends, which tells you about the characters. And there is The Journey Beyond Equestria, which tells you about the world building of the film. The parts where it expands beyond what was seen in the TV series. They felt somewhat forced with a smile. Everybody's having fun. But, as it's a children's film, that is understandable. If you want to get your children into animation, animated filmmaking, I'd recommend showing them the Journey Beyond Equestria special feature, as it does a good job of glorifying the job. Finally, there's a special feature cartoon short called Hanazuki Full of Treasures. I didn't know what was happening in it, and I didn't understand why it was on the Blu-ray. I looked into it and found out that it was a TV series, but I still didn't know what I was doing on the Blu-ray. There was no character development or logic behind anything that happened in it. Mark Kermode said the same thing for the My Little Pony movie. I didn't feel that way about the movie, but I felt incredibly similarly whilst watching Hanazuki Full of Treasures. I would recommend the My Little Pony movie to children, or more realistically recommend it to children, to parents to buy it for their children.
Sa Cát là một đồn điền được chăm sóc như một điền trang của Pháp. Cô sẽ ở đây tạm thời, tôi sẽ cho cô thử thách.
Sa Cát là chỗ chết. Cô không biết là cô tự dẫn xác về chuyện gì đâu.
Eureka released The Housemaid under their Montage Pictures branding. It's a Vietnamese film released in 2016. The Blu-ray comes with a Blu-ray disc as well as a DVD. The cover, you can also slip out and choose which side you want to display. That is quite nice. I like both covers, so I don't know which one I prefer. So I'm just using the basic one, the one that came with it. Unfortunately, the Montage Pictures branding that Eureka has been opening, they released New World last month, in January. But Eureka, with their Masters of Cinema branding, they do a great job of having tons of interesting special features, like House, which I mentioned previously. But The Housemaid only featured a theatrical trailer for the film.
Đại quý Loren có một người vợ là Madame Canmin. Bà vợ ở nhà chờ đợi mỏi mòn, cô đơn, tự tử.
The film was decent. It's a horror film about a ghostly haunting. There's a housemaid. She gets hired to go to this house, and she starts experiencing spooky events. Not just her, actually. I misremembered that. Various characters in the film experience spooky events. There is also somewhat of a romantic subplot. It is being marketed as a erotic thriller. However, the erotic parts of it are downplayed. They're not as extreme as something like the similarly titled Handmaiden, which was incredible, with beautiful sex scenes, whereas The Housemaid, they were whatever, they were mediocre, the sex scenes. The film reminded me strongly of The Woman in Black. The ghost in the film is even referred to as a woman in black in the film. It's set in a French style house, so there's some nice production design in there, some nice costumes. This film, I don't know if I'd recommend it to anybody. It's about a 6 out of 10 type film. I'm happy I watched it, but I probably wouldn't watch it again.
Oh, hey, you're up.
Am I in a dorm room?
Yeah, I folded your pants for you.
Great.
I didn't purchase the DVD or Blu-ray of Happy Death Day, but I did rent it. And it was pretty naff. Happy Death Day is a Groundhog's Day ripoff. This girl relives the same day over and over again. However, this is a horror film, so the girl is being killed on her birthday. Every time she gets killed, she wakes up again, reliving the same day over and over. This premise has been done to death, and the only film that has done it right is Groundhog Day. There are some other time travel films that are acceptable, but I only consider Groundhog Day type films ones where they're forced to relive the same day over and over again. This, whilst not the worst Groundhog's Day clone, it's quite low on the list. The acting is average, in some cases below average. The character work, the main character, I couldn't care less about. She does things for no other reason than that it's convenient to the plot. Some stuff is obviously done just for the trailer. There's a segment where she decides to walk out naked, but why? Why? Why would you do that? I wouldn't do that. Would you do that?
You relive the same day over and over again. Kind of start to see who you really are.
There was one decent shot where I can't remember what happened. I can't remember if she was hit or what happened, but she fell over and then she sort of fell over into the bed to be asleep. That shot was alright, but the rest were the most generic, standard, passive shots. It's incredibly passive film. The cinematography is subpar. It's not atrocious, it is watchable, but it's also noticeably under average. As far as the Groundhog Day rip-off bit goes, this is the most obvious Groundhog Day rip-off. There is a line in the film where a character refers to the events as like the film Groundhog Day. So you can't even imagine that it was a coincidence and that they hadn't heard of this famous film Groundhog Day. No, they just stole the idea blatantly. There is one character that I sometimes almost liked, but not really. It's an under-average film. I wouldn't recommend it.
I want to make a speech at my father's funeral.
No problem.
Technically, yes, but practically.
When I said no problem, what I meant was no problem.
The final film I watched, the final film of the month, is The Death of Stalin, which I bought on Blu-ray. Death of Stalin is a comedy about as the title suggests, The Death of Stalin. It's a British comedy film featuring many famous actors you might know, like Steve Buscemi. He's the main one, but if you watch the film, you recognise a lot of faces. The comedy is quite good. I remember laughing quite a few times throughout the film. So as a comedy, it works. However, as a film, it is average. Cinematography works. The narrative works. But the cinematography and narrative and characters, whilst they all work, they don't have anything incredibly impressive about them. If you are looking for a comedy movie to have a few laughs, I would recommend it. However, if you're looking for something a bit more, something that's going to blow you away, this isn't it. The Blu-ray comes with an audio commentary of the director and writer, as well as the other writers. There are interviews with the cast and crew, as well as a collection of short deleted scenes. Some of these deleted scenes probably could have been in the film because they were quite funny. If you liked the film, you should definitely check out the deleted scenes.
We have to act. I really need your help.
I'm going to have to report this conversation. Threatening to do harm or obstruct any member of the Presidium in the process of looking at your fucking face.
So yeah, I would recommend Death of Stalin to fans of British comedy. Overall, I have mixed feelings about that month, about February 2018. There was some really good stuff. Shape of Water, Lady Bird, I, Tonya, and there was and Blade Runner 2049. But then there was some really crap stuff, like The Cloverfield Paradox and 50 Shades Freed. But tune in next month when I talk about some other films.